Hello and welcome to the Crypto Chronicle Podcast. We are back officially in a new room, which are pretty snazzy, Taylor.
Mate, she looks good, doesn't she?
He does. We've got the green beautiful light up the back to represent the green week. I think we've somewhat been having the kind of 2-week hiatus we've had. Bitcoin and Ethereum's probably been chopping around for the most part, but we have a lot of important kind of fundamental news to get through. Actually, I did plan to...
Oh no.
It's so broken from when we first initially did this in the Bitcoin ETF in January that it now no longer works. But I'm going to keep this as a historical timepiece of the podcast. So this gets left there, and whenever something we like happens, it gets blown. I know, it's a special week, new podcast room.
Hey, I know, I feel
Ethereum ETF approved.
I should have brought mine down.
But yeah, it has really been kind of a big 2 weeks. I guess the last podcast we had was on a Thursday. And the next morning at around 5 a.m. was the approval or rejection of obviously the Ethereum Spot ETF in the United States.
Front run. The infamous front run.
Yes, the infamous front run. And really, yeah, that kind of podcast was about that huge price action that had happened. Obviously, from the start of the week, I think Ethereum was trading sub 3,000. And, you know, by the time all of that news had swelled in, it was 3,800, wasn't it? 3,700.
Like, as soon as someone said, oh, look, it looks as though... No, someone refiled, wasn't it?
No, I think one of the Bloomberg journalists came out and said, hang on, there's a few refilings going on here. Well, we didn't expect
Went
this.
from 25 to 75. And then all of
it's
a sudden
looking like a 180. Yeah, and obviously for those weekly listeners, which we know we have a lot of, they know that Taylor and I were quite bullish on the prospects of it being approved. I guess it probably wasn't on somewhat the merits that we thought, because we just assumed it's BlackRock. They're going...
You always back Larry.
Yeah, you're always back Larry and BlackRock, which in this case still would have been a fine thesis because it got approved anyway. But yeah, really the theory around this was a political game, wasn't it? So
the whole point of it was market manipulation, which you can't blame them. You know, like they announced, the Bitcoin ETF, and all of a sudden Bitcoin doubled by the time it was approved.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
How do you beat the system again? Well, you just don't release anything until it's about to happen, and then you get your ETH cheaper.
It is very true. And I think a big thing about, and it's at the moment it's kind of hearsay as to why I guess Joe Biden specifically and his political party did kind of 180 here, and it was kind of to do with that 2 weeks building up to, wasn't it? Where we were discussing on the podcast about how Trump had come out. He was the first politician to now accept Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as donations. So it started with that, and it started. I think he was at a press conference, and there were kids there asking about Bitcoin, and he said something there.
What did he say? I forgot. I'm watching the video. What did he say?
Yeah, I can't remember what he said.
Something really dumb as well.
Yeah.
I'll have to find it. I'll bring it up next week.
Which we'll actually come back to later, because he's kind of gone on this new cryptocurrency crusade, hasn't he? And it's become a highly political issue in the States, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and cryptos, which even goes to, Biden this week vetoing, one of the big policies there about how they record their accounting purposes for cryptos. It's this huge kind of shit show, isn't it?
It's become very much like, 6 months ago it was untouted. No one touched it.
Yeah.
Didn't talk about it. It was just sort of like background noise.
Yeah.
It's really become the forefront in the last few weeks, right?
Yeah.
Like you got Trump obviously babbling on and Biden just pushing it back down.
And it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Because, me and you often talk about, in terms of Australia, and I think, we've got close to 30% of people now, investing and trading in cryptocurrencies.
The US is higher as well. The US is higher.
I think the US is pretty similar, or probably is a bit higher. But in any case, let's just assume it's similar. Yeah. And there you go. That's 30% of the vote, right? Theirs isn't, obviously, you don't have to vote. But in any case, and not everyone's just going to vote purely off crypto, but it still creates, a voter there that they need to win. And, the way I saw this, and I'm sure, the way a lot of the people saw this play out was, in that 2 weeks building up to what was pretty much a 99% chance of, 90% chance of rejection, I'd say. That they turned around and they said, we're going to lose a lot of votes here if we probably reject this ETF. We begin being entirely hawkish, which has made it a bit more confusing, I guess, when vetoing that accounting bill. But at the same time, he states in that he doesn't want to undermine the SEC, and, there's this whole kind of mouse chasing going on, isn't there?
I was literally in my head thinking of a word that I could use that is not profanity to describe the situation. And mouse chasing is probably the best way to word it. It's, you could say on a podcast. It's just a garble.
So just with these spot ETFs, I guess, the price action around Ethereum was really interesting, wasn't it? And I guess kind of the whole market. But I guess, I'll ask you, what do you reckon your expectations are for these ETFs in terms of demand versus Bitcoin? Do you reckon nowhere near 25% of the demand?
We're just talking purely Bitcoin, or
I'm just talking purely. So how? Or? So for instance, it's currently we're at the start of June. The Bitcoin ETFs were approved in January. We just had our 15th consecutive day of net positive inflows for the Bitcoin ETF. Yeah. So it's like we're 6 months, 5 months down the line, and they're still buying up this. So my question to you is, do you see a similar thing happening for Ethereum, or you reckon it's going to be?
I think the volume will be a lot lower.
Yeah, for sure.
In my opinion, I feel as though it's something that a lot of companies will probably want to have on their sheet.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I still think there's quite a lot of healthy room for Ethereum to grow, particularly with the utility that's still to come.
Yeah,
when it comes
particularly
to
with Ethereum
inside of it, you know what I mean?
Well, it's kind of a good, there's always that kind of raging debate online, and I actually saw one of the Bloomberg reporters kind of asked this question. He said, the easy selling point to a boomer or an institution is digital gold, right? You just tell them, okay, you always invest in gold. This is just the digital version. So, and they go, okay, yeah, I understand that. And then, there's this kind of wording at the moment that's like, how do we explain Ethereum to the boomer? And people are using digital oil as which kind of makes sense because it's it's a decentralized application platform that's supposed to be built on, applications are supposed to be built on, and it kind of makes sense somewhat, doesn't it? The oil to power the machines that are required to make the blockchains run somewhat, and it did make sense to me, but I still, going back to what we were saying about demand and volume, is that Bitcoin's so easy to sell as a store of value. The idea of it as a store of value, whereas ETH isn't. Even though you could argue it essentially is.
Do many people stockpile oil that isn't?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So I'm saying that the selling of digital gold is a lot easier than digital oil, regardless of how you see it, because of that store of value aspect. Whereas you don't really go to someone and you're saying, macro looks a bit shaky, or the fiat's doing this, you should buy ETH. There's not really that argument. And I think it might be a bit harder to sell the boomer on that.
I don't think we'd have the same inflow.
No.
That's my opinion.
Well, it was what I was getting to, because the Bloomberg analysts do expect it to be 25%, and then Eric actually predicted 15 or 20%, which probably sounds about right.
Yeah.
And I think there's a few reasons for this. I think the store of value thing is one of them. I think obviously just the limited publicity on it is another. Everyone knows Bitcoin probably as a boomer by now. Not everyone would know Ethereum. But I think as well, from an institutional investing standpoint, I think that Ethereum ETFs got cucked a little bit by the removal of the staking proposal. Yeah. So it made it a lot less desirable, because if you had an ETF that was earning yield... Well,
do you think that will never come in though?
I don't think so, because I think if the SEC is the one determining these decisions, which they are, I feel through the Howey test they'll always view staking and Ethereum as a security, because you're essentially saying, buy this, we're promising you income, if that makes sense, which is what a security essentially is. But it's hard to say. We didn't think they'd backflip.
I still think they'll still be looked as a security.
Yeah,
they're going to go throughout this court trial.
Well, I think I did make mention on that last podcast we did just before the decision, and I said this is why they're happy to approve it, because I remember how I said they wouldn't want to approve it on the embarrassment that gets rid of their security case, because it doesn't, because they can still say you can have your spot Ether ETF. Yeah. It's just when you stake ETH, that's a security. Yeah. And the staking component and that court case there. And obviously we've got a ton of it to play out still.
But does at that point, does that mean that the foundation takes the loss on the staking security basis, and then obviously deal with whatever the fallout from that is, and then...
Well, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if it's a security. I guess that's the other question.
If you're BlackRock, right, and you're filing for an ETH ETF, and you go, okay, look, well, let's get it pushed through. All right, I don't care about this court case. Let's get it pushed through. We'll deal with the court case. Backing from BlackRock. Yep, awesome. Go fight it. If you lose, doesn't matter. We'll just add staking to the ETF down the line.
Yeah. Probably they probably did do that.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, like it's a 10% loss to get the 90% gain.
Yeah, no, you're right. Well, to wrap up our ETF podcast, just the ETF part.
How many more topics?
The Bitcoin ETFs now hold more than 1 million BTC, which is crazy. So of the 19 or close to 20 million now circulating, they hold, so what is that, 1/20th, so 0.5%. Close to 5%, my bad.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Yeah, 5%. And also BlackRock has now officially overtaken Grayscale as the biggest ETF issuer / holder.
It's crazy how long that's taken.
It's taken 5 months, but you got to remember how much was under management for Grayscale as well. So,
what's your stab for the end of the year?
On terms of that balancing, or how much
of total BTC will the ETFs hold? Total supply.
It's a trick question because what if the market tops before then?
Well,
they're known to cheat their bags, the ETF holders.
Do you really think anyone who's buying in the ETF is going to sell it within the first 12 months?
I think there's an argument to be made they would, because they haven't experienced what we've experienced.
Yeah, if they've been sold on that, haven't
they? We can stomach a negative 40% drawdown. Can a boomer? A negative 40% drawdown is unknown to a boomer.
0.5 of their portfolio into it. They're literally just putting in like a little bit of play money here or there, 100K out of their 15 million.
I'm sure we'll be able to see a fair bit of data on it.
Like that's what I mean.
So I'm sure we'll be able to see holder data on the ETFs and.
What's the I need to do that. I haven't looked at that. I want to know what the contract is when you buy the ETF. How long do you have to hold it for? Minimum term value?
I don't think you'd have to.
They should.
We'll find out.
Minimum 5 years.
And just lastly, internationally on the ETFs, a big one from today is on CBOE, the monochrome Bitcoin ETF launched, which is awesome. Taylor, Cal, and Will were lucky enough to go up to the private launch party last Tuesday night, was it?
Yeah, Tuesday night,
So it's awesome to see that, it's kind of grown and expanded to Australia as well. And now any institutional or retail investor can now, through whatever hedge fund or your accountant or asset management firm can now invest in the Bitcoin ETF from Monochrome, which is listed obviously, as I said, on CBOE, which is huge. And I think come year's end is when they'll begin to be listed on the ASX as well.
That was the plan,
Yeah. So awesome to see that. And additionally, South Korea is now facing calls to embrace crypto ETFs following the actions in US, Hong Kong, and I guess Australia now. So South Korea in particular, obviously we know about North Korean crypto, but South Korea is actually quite big on crypto as well. I don't know if you've seen many coins listed on their specialized exchange there recently and how hard it's pumped certain coins.
Yeah, that's right.
Akash Network is one. But anyways, they're a bit hesitant, but they're kind of citing potential disruptions to the financial system and stuff like that. But I think everyone eventually has to catch on. That's just how it goes. So going back to kind of wrap all this ETF and kind of mania up and what's happening right now is going back to kind of Trump and Biden. And we saw the biggest thing for Trump was in this political spectrum and, how crypto is being used as a political weapon now is that he came out at his recent rallies and he kind of asserted, we must be the leader in the crypto field. Yeah. If you vote for Joe Biden, your crypto is going to zero. I'm going to make sure we do all the right things by self-custody, which is a dig at, Elizabeth Warren. So, his active kind of courting of crypto, he's going to win a lot of pro-crypto voters from this. And, I don't throw my hat in this political ring. I tell people this all the time. To me, it looks like it's the lesser of two evils somewhat. One can't speak properly and doesn't remember what he's saying. The other...
The devil that doesn't do anything or the devil that at least...
That's the way I say it. So maybe some people won't be happy with me criticising probably either of them, but just the way I see it. It's becoming this huge thing now, and I feel like the majority of people that are knee deep in crypto would just vote off crypto. I'm not even joking. Sure. I think they realise that, and that's why Trump's going so hard. And he's been involved in NFTs and stuff, but he's shit all over crypto before, and he said that he hasn't liked it, and Bitcoin is this and that. And Larry said the same thing in 2019.
I think he's either finally caught on to the utility behind it, or he's caught on to the vote.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, anyone who holds crypto in the US is going to vote for him because It's going to put potentially more money in their pocket.
Yeah. And so, it kind of extended even further than this. And he's pledged his support for Ross. What's his name? Ross Ulbricht or whatever, the Silk Road guy. So, there's been a huge contentious thing, obviously, since he got taken away. It was a massive thing with crypto because cryptocurrency was obviously the choice of currency used on the platform. For those who don't know, Silk Road was kind of just this dark web kind of marketplace, I guess, so for anything for drugs and all that type of stuff. And essentially, they locked this guy away just for making the marketplace, I believe. So he's promised to free him, the self-custody thing. And then he also squashed CBDCs, which is also a big thing. So I feel like, a lot of those kind of rednecky or kind of voters that think their stuff's getting digitalized and whatnot, they definitely would love to hear that. So
he's really gone for the techs and the rednecks.
Yeah.
Probably do make up a fairly decent chunk of the US, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So as a result, Biden began to intensify his kind of outreach. And so there was this report that came out that he was kind of reaching out to people to find out like what he should do. Calls to industry leaders to kind of find out, like what steps should I take?
I wish he'd called me. I just would have said, mate, sleep less.
Sleepy Joe. No, he needs that sleep. But yeah, I guess now the main thing is to show that besides this vetoing, which I see as kind of just a support of the SEC, is that both parties are really coming around to crypto. And, I made the comments on Twitter that I feel like ETH and BTC are underpriced right now. And I spoke to you about it as well, is that like, think of who the final bosses of crypto are, who are our main villains that we need to overcome to see it really appreciate and value in global adoption. Well, one is banks, one is governments. And it's like, well, you spoke about how JP Morgan Stanley, they're adding Bitcoin ETFs to their balance sheets. They're working to get these accounting rules overturned so that they no longer have to recognize crypto assets as liabilities on their balance sheet. Both political parties are coming around to crypto, trying to tell you that they're the best thing for crypto. I'm finding it very hard to sit here and be bearish, which is a good and a bad thing. Obviously, it helps my long-term investing time horizon be a little less anxious because, to me, it's like this is long-term prosperity things, isn't it? Because it's only the beginning of the political spectrum, really.
But even then, how can you sit here and be bearish when we went down to 59 from 74, now back to 69?
Yeah. And I think, and I'll show this in the Chronicle and I send it into the Discord a bit. If you just get a monthly chart of Bitcoin up and you draw a box from the 2021 all-time highs across to where we're trading now, it just looks like the cleanest SR flip that once we flipped it, each time we've gone down to try and send us back below the prior hours, it's just said, thrown straight back up.
So I've looked at the quarterly chart.
Yeah, even better.
That is unreal. If you want to go look at a Bitcoin quarterly chart, tell me it's not going to like 150. Just tell me. There's just like if you line it up and you're just like, wow, that looks perfect.
Yeah.
So I just there's a big case for it.
It's a big case.
The first
guys, I do have the flu, so
Mitch is coming back off of
battling through this. But outside of the States and to industry wide kind of things, we saw Mastercard launch their peer-to-peer crypto credentials pilot program. So this was awesome. This involved partners such as Bit2Me, Mercado, Foxbit, more. And what it does is it uses human readable aliases verified by Mastercard, eliminating the need for complex wallet addresses and pre-screening transactions. So how you got to figure out how to keep everything, blah blah blah. So I think this is just a more technological, safer way of peer-to-peer transactions and wallets somewhat, which is good. And, in crypto, I guess that's kind of the knock, isn't it? That, if you lose your wallet key or you lose your whatever it is, your complex password, your crypto's gone. So as long as there's other ways around, you've obviously got an opinion on this.
I just feel like if you lose it, you lose it.
Yeah. Well, I've never done it, but
everyone else,
yeah. Okay. Yeah, the man. Just put your password down.
If you lose it, you lose it. Unfortunate.
My big boy project that I have serious conviction on.
Here we go.
Fantom.
Oh, yes.
Is introducing the Sonic Chain launch very slowly as we're moving through. But what they did was they established a new foundation called the Sonic Foundation.
Good name.
So CEO Michael Kong shared the news on May 23rd. So this foundation's probably the same as most other ones. Think of your Arbitrum Foundation, whatever it is, overseeing governance, treasury management, partnerships, ecosystem development. So the coolest thing about Sonic, and for those that don't know, is Fantom FTM, for those that do know, transitioning to Sonic, a whole new chain. Essentially what this chain is, it's still its own layer 1 solution, but it increases time to finality, transaction speeds, pretty much to a certain level that not many other blockchains, if any, have. And so it integrates a layer 2 as well, linking the EVM compatible network to Ethereum through this bridging. So really it's kind of this technology that's not really on the market, and that's my somewhat thesis, non-financial advice. Sorry, go on.
No, I'm actually curious.
Yeah.
I've heard of this. I just haven't looked into it enough.
Yeah, and so my thesis for here is that whilst the technology in crypto doesn't yield you the best results always, you got to think to something like Solana. Okay, why is Solana used? Transaction speeds, cheapness, time to finality. It's just easy to use, right?
Yeah.
You go on Ethereum, it's slow. I've got to wait 10 minutes to transaction confirm. It costs me $60.
Yeah.
Okay, so Fantom can do everything Sol can do. Great. Even better, it can do it even better. And another reason why I like Fantom is that it's undervalued right now because it's actually been hit by a lot of black swans. Whether you see that as bearish or bullish is up to you. It's had the multi-chain incident, a number of other incidents. Yeah. But probably most of you are my clients, and most of you are probably people I know. I've heard me say this 100 times, so you probably don't need to hear me say it again. But yeah, it's awesome that they're releasing that now. It's something you should keep an eye on. As a listener, if you're not a client of ours, or you are and you haven't heard of Fantom, or you're thinking about it, take a read up of, I'll include this article in the written chronicle, but go and look up Sonic. They've got a few cool videos explaining it and stuff as well. So
does that mean it's moving obviously you said it's moving to its new chain. Does that mean the whole token rebranding? Everything?
Yeah, whole token rebranding. So their new token for Sonic will be $S, if that makes sense. So as in just S.
Yeah. S, yeah.
That's the ticker S. So S for Sonic, and then Fantom is fully changed to Sonic, and then I believe it's 1-for-1 token. So
auto swap?
Although, so yeah, I think they'll do it by an airdrop. I need to double check that. So it'll either you just go to a website and you swap your tokens or whatever, or they'll airdrop 1-to-1. There might be a little bit of dilution though that I have to read into and think about.
I'm just curious how that works. Yeah.
Yeah, but I believe they've said it's 1-to-1, but I feel like it's not 100%. But in any case, the time to finality is less than a second. So you to do a transaction on Fantom takes you less than your ability to click the kind of thing. So that's how crazy this tech is. And whilst, even if you're looking at it from a retail perspective and you're trying to invest and you're trying to say, okay, well, like, I'm not trying to invest in Fantom because I think it's the next Solana. It's just that this technology yields other things. It could yield a lot of meme building on Fantom like it did on Sol, but what about other projects that want to come build on it? It's a layer 1. So maybe as opposed to them going, oh, let's go build, my new insurance business on Ethereum, why would we not go to Sonic, where it's faster, cheaper, et cetera, et cetera. So things like that you got to think into with the tech and why it's important. Probably most investors don't look into this and compare them, but it's a good thing to do. So,
do you know why they got their name?
So,
do you know how they got their name?
Sonic? No.
Supersonic speed.
Yeah. Well, it's funny enough. There's a meme coin already called Speedy, I think, on Fantom, and it's the photo of Sonic. So yeah, it's actually, funnily enough, it actually you're joking about it, but I think it is kind of based on that. Yeah.
I've heard. I think I saw something about it. Yeah, I was cracking it, but I'm pretty sure I've seen it.
In sad news, we will end the slight fundamental sign on sad, but it's okay news, is that Kabosu, the Dogecoin crypto icon, has sadly passed away. I don't know if we actually spoke about this on the last podcast. I couldn't remember, but it happened around the time we had it. So I wanted to... but he was the beloved Shiba Inu, kind of meme dog, I guess. And for those that know the Doji meme and Dogecoin, he is the one that you looked at every single day. You looked at a Dogecoin chart or page or whatever. But he passed away peacefully at 18. I think they had a farewell gathering for him. Yeah. But, farewell. Kabosu will carry Dogecoin for you high. I'm sure there's a lot of other memes out there that'll live precariously through you. So, yeah. Thank you, Kabosu, for your time, and we'll see you in doggy heaven. Alrighty, TA. There's actually not a heap a heap to report here. Given that, probably should have checked what we were trading at 2 weeks ago prior to.
It was like 65. 64.
Yes, and so since then we've gone up to I think about 72ish maybe maximum.
Yeah.
Traded back down to 67, where I'll show the range point of control, where the point of control being where the most volume is sitting in this kind of range up here. If you want, when I say range, I mean all the price action that's occurred pretty much since we entered into say the 60,000 zone, and traded since there. So we've pretty much been holding that as pretty pivotal support as this kind of ETF mania has been happening. There's been lessened QT. Things have kind of fundamentally turned favorably for us, you would say, given the political spectrum, etc., etc. So really at the moment, it's kind of suspicious price action to me because I feel like it should be going higher. It is. So yesterday we're at 67. Today we're at 69. We touched 70.5 overnight.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
But in any case, there isn't a heap to report. We're just doing the chop post-halving that we've spoken about. We said give it 60 to 90 days. It's now been probably about 40. A bit less, 35 to 40.
Yeah, no, you're right, yeah.
Yeah, so
I was about to say no.
Hopefully, if you are in that camp and you are looking, and that is something you truly believe in, then it's going to be the end of June into kind of July, August that you'll see really hectic price action.
Even then, May go away.
Yeah.
Come back and it's the same price. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And I think the only two things that are of concern to people right now is either you're being sidelined and you're too scared about how high Bitcoin will go and you'll miss out. Fools. And then the notion that Bitcoin has topped out is an interesting one. And one topic I will talk...
It baffles me.
Well, the reason why it's interesting to me, and it's from a historical point of view, which I think this argument loses merit because we made a ATH before halving, but obviously there's diminishing returns every bull cycle. We all know that. Exponential decay, some people call it. And essentially you get kind of 20% less of the dynamic move of the prior bull market, kind of, from low to high. So I think the last 2018 to 2021, from the low to the high was a 22x. You get, and then so prior to that, in the previous bull cycle was a 400x. So you got 20% of, whatever it is. Sorry, the maths isn't mathing in my head. But in this case, if you use that same maths for the 22x we had in the last bull market and you apply it to this one with the 20% notion, it's a 4.5x. Which if you use the $15,000 low, it's an ATH of about 74,000. So, don't want to scare anyone, but using that exact math that's been used for every single bull cycle, we've already made the top for the cycle. Using that 4.5x 20% calculation, I would probably give that about 5 to 10% chance of being truth. Probably less.
Let's think about it from purely just an economic standpoint.
Yeah.
2018 bull run, there was 44 people invested in the market at that point.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think you're betting against Bitcoin not rallying a little more than 5K from here to make a new high. But it's something to note because diminishing returns and exponential decay is something people do account for. But then a counter argument to that, right, is using periods and time is that we're 450 days, I think. Well, regardless, going back to the halving thing, historically we've exploded after every halving, so you can still use that calculation and what's to come in the next kind of 2 to 3 months. But still an interesting point to raise and it's something to speculate because I think, employee, some people that are probably new to our services or even someone that probably sees me speak about trading goes, well, how can you have an idea for this and an idea for that? If you're an investor and you're holding Bitcoin and you need to actually have the possibility and consideration of what if this is the top, even if it's a 1% chance or a 0.1% chance. And it even goes to the predictive ideas that I show people. And some people would read them and go, why are you spending all this time trying to predict where? And 99% of them don't come off, but the chance that it does, you're prepared, right? If you've considered that Bitcoin's topping, you've made a plan of how you would exit or what you would do if it was the case that it broke down before a level, then you're ahead of 99% of people and you're not going to panic and you might not jeet the bottom or sell it. It might be that your plan actually isn't to sell and it's to actually reinvest more. That's my point. So you're planning ahead that, well, if this is the current top, the local top of the current cycle where, okay, well, if price lands here, how much more am I going to put in? It doesn't necessarily have to be you'll sell out and wait to get back in. It's planning in different various ways. But in any case, mining, how's that going?
Everything is very much similar to where we are. It's kind of the most boring time to look at mining from a fundamental standpoint, just being that everyone is in the same boat of it's very stable.
Yeah.
There's not much happening. That's just because rewards, no one, like if you look at the transaction rate, Bitcoin's right down, fees are low, rewards are exactly where they're meant to be. Like every time I speak to clients, they're like, oh, you know, I'm $1 down or I'm $10 up a day. Do you know what I mean? Depending on what stock you've got. But, you know, when you look at every other halving, everyone's 5+ down. So it's in a pretty good spot.
Yeah.
You know, the interesting standpoint we've got is that it's actually a really good time to be looking at mining in general, of whether it's scale or get into it, just being from a standing point that, okay, we've gone through the last 30 days post-halving, rewards are stable, miner prices are stable, if not low, Bitcoin price is still high. Well, in commensuration to where we've been. Where do you think it's going to go? Because the more you wait, a lot of people sit back and go, oh, I'm waiting for the rewards to raise.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No worries. Pay double for your miner.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting spot in the sense of Bitcoin. When it comes to all the alts, it's a very similar market in the sense of what it's been. You know, we've got a lot of new Casper miners coming out. Please be careful when it comes to Casper mining. The reward rate is very finite. It's a great coin, but however, when it comes to mining, you know, like for example, looking at a KS5 Pro, you know, the top level machine, I was talking to Cal about it actually earlier today, and if you look at the stats from it from the 1st of May, it was making 959 Casper per day. As of today, it's 463.
So it's halved.
That's halved in a month.
Yeah.
And that's just because of how many people are mining it, the emission schedule. It's just comparatively to other mining algorithms, it's not favored.
Yeah.
And that's purely just because...
Is this why, obviously we've seen really positive price action on it recently. Could that be because, you know, so many more people are trying to mine it and they're
yes and no
hodling and...
You're hodling's a really hard one.
Because obviously my assumption here is with the supply, is there the same issuance every day for Casper?
No.
The emission schedule, right. So the more people that mine it, the quicker the circulating supply is going to be.
Yes, correct.
So that has to be dampening price, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
And it so lowers by, I think it's 5% every month in the amount of supply.
Right.
And it happens every fortnight.
Yeah.
So realistically, the issue that I have with it when it comes to mining is that, okay, say you're mining on it for the next 12 months, you're going to consistently get less and less and less and less, all right? So you're potentially using your power bills and paying out of pocket and hodling, or you're using the amount of Casper to pay your power bill. However, you're still going to have stock left over. What do? Do you try and hodl it and wait for $1 and get a return? After 5 to 6 months and you've seen the drop, as soon as it goes up 20, 30, 40%, you're going to dump.
Yeah.
So to me, I do feel like you're probably going to see on Casper potentially quite a lot of variance, you know, once you go up to 25, 50 cents. I feel like there probably will be a fairly decent liquidation event because the big miners are going to have to get their cash back.
Yeah, there they are, yeah.
So
that's a good point.
I'm not too sure what that looks like. It's just something that I guess, you know, you have to be really sure you know where Casper's going as to if you want to mine it.
Yeah.
The exciting news, I guess, is that the new L9 was released, or in the sense of the announced from Bitmain, which is a Litecoin Dogecoin miner. Yeah. Pretty exciting that we have finally got it, in the sense that I've been touting it for probably the last 6 months. Yeah. Double as powerful as the L7, so it's kind of cool. Yeah. However, it's still, you know, pre-release, so it's something that we're not really too keen on getting stock of just yet, just being that it's going to be overpriced. And just can I quickly just add something, you can explain it probably a bit better, is like just on, you know, Taylor saying about being careful with Casper and even with Litecoin is like you should almost see these the same way you view investing, is that like we invest in even in things like Casper and Litecoin as beta plays to our Bitcoin investing, which is our main investing. So you should see it the similar way with mining, in that your sole focus should be on Bitcoin mining,
mining. And maybe if you have the luxury, you can dive into something like an L9 or Casper mining. Don't try and make that your focus, because we know what works, and that's Bitcoin mining. Yes, we know that Casper mining works, but you got a lot less history to go off. We're talking a year and a half Casper's been around for. Yeah.
It's just a very risky play. Like the best setup that I've actually seen when it comes to mining Cas is purely like, I've got a client who's got 1 Casper miner and 10 Bitcoin miners. And his original concept was that he was going to mine Bitcoin and reinvest into potentially more Bitcoin miners or Cas miners. However, we caught up, I reckon it was like 3 months ago, and we were going through like what it's done for him so far and how everything's proceeding. He's like, I've actually switched my strategy a bit. And I was like, okay. I was like, what have you been doing? So his Bitcoin miners have been sitting there mining Bitcoin for almost the last 12 months, and he has not touched any of it.
Huh.
Right? And he has used the Casper miner to pay all of the power bill for all of them, and has still got Cas left over.
Yeah, right, okay.
So he has mined for the past 12 months after spending $60,000 on his upfront cost.
Mm-hmm.
He has mined almost, I think it was 0.65 of a Bitcoin over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
And he's still got a ton of Cas left over as well.
Yeah. So it's pretty much break even already.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the best setup I've seen. And that's kind of the risk mitigation that when it comes to mining, because, say for an example right now, it's the best time looking at it in a financial year. If you're a business and you've got, tax debts and you've got 100K you can potentially use, or 50, buying, multiplying and having a strategy that potentially can compound your effect as well as your revenue, that's kind of where the sweet spot is.
Yeah.
As much as mining rewards right now on BTC aren't going to blow your socks off, it's about that percentage gain. For him, he bought his miners and Bitcoin was at 30 grand and now it's at, 69. So it's all perspective.
It is perspective.
L9, very exciting. I think the issue that's going to come is that they're going to be about 20 grand. So they're pretty spenny at the moment. Anyone... L7s, L9s. L7s are still good. However, with the L9 being released, it's just something to be a little bit cautious of. There's no real determination of how much stock is coming out. And you kind of want to avoid the issue where the issuance of machines really dictates your rewards. Yeah. So it's something potentially, like if you're interested in Light and Doge, reach out and we can have a chat about it and sort of see the risk mitigation if it's worthwhile. But otherwise, altcoin miners generally start to get production once BTC rockets. That's usually like second half of the cycle. Yeah. That'll be when they'll start releasing this, that, and everything else.
Yeah. Same as everything, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They'll start releasing it when they get the most money for it, basically.
Yeah. Alrighty, well, that should wrap us up for the inaugural of our somewhat new podcast. We'll be in here from here on in. We'll actually be looking to have a few guests on soon, which I will be happy to announce soon. But until then, we'll see you next week.
See you next week. If you got any suggestions for the room or anything you want to see on the podcast, let us know.
Hey, even if you want to sponsor us, take something like that.
Hey, if there's a particular topic that you want us to discuss, we will take donations in Bitcoin.
If you want us to discuss your business, my wallet address. All right, thanks, guys. See ya.
Thanks, guys. Hey, you did well then. Only one cough. That's good. I was happy with that.